Okay, cool. It's time, guys. It's already 6:01 almost. We will start quickly. Firstly, good evening. Good evening, everyone. I am hoping everybody is having a good day as of now. So, just wanted to let you know that I'm giving you a heads up before in hand that this is the last session for chapter 6, right? After this, we won't be doing Bhakti and Sufi traditions till a really long time. So, this is the last part. We will finish the revision of chapter 6 by the end of this particular session, right? So, that being said, I'll quickly do the intros part. A couple of you are already here, but I'm hoping others will join in the next couple of minutes. Cool. So, as most of you all know, my name is Nikitha and I'm the history educator here at Unacademy Scholars channel, and I take classes for both standard 11th and 12th. And as far as my educational qualifications are concerned, I have recently graduated from Ashoka University with a bachelor's degree. I have a major in history and a minor in political science. Quickly talking a little bit about Unacademy's plus features. There are n number of them, starting from you can actually sit at the comfort of your own houses and learn live from top educators of India, and all of them are available on one single platform. And there are regular doubt clearing sessions, answer writing sessions. Along with that, you can also take part in practice tests and live test series. There's exhaustive coverage of syllabus. There's mentorship and also guidance provided to you, along with access to study materials, which are usually in the form of PDFs. Again, there's something, the pricing for Plus goes as such. We have 6 different ranges of subscriptions starting from 6 months to 24 months. The prices on the left side of the screen are the actual prices, but if you use the code, which is TUM10, you'll be basically getting a 10% off, and these are the post discounted prices. And quickly moving on to Iconic, there's personal mentorship provided. There are live doubt solving sessions, weekly reports, parent connect, and also study planners. So in this case, we have 9 different ranges starting from 3 months to 48 months. It's the same thing here as well. The left side are the actual prices. After using the code, the right side ones are the discounted prices. So have a look at them carefully and go ahead with whichever one you feel comfortable. And lastly, there's something called as Emerge. As most of you all know, it's a test conducted by Unacademy, and the format of the test is basically aligned with the latest CBSE guidelines. So basically, it helps you to it helps for some sort of practice for your term 1 boards. So I highly recommend you all to go enroll yourselves in the quizzes and take part in them in as many as you can. Really helpful. The link for that is in the description below of this video, so check that one. And yeah, that's a little pitch we had for today. Okay, a couple of you all joined right now, so good evening whoever just joined. Muskan is here with us. Hi Muskan, good evening. Okay, so as I was telling you before, this is going to be the last class for discussing Bhakti and Sufi traditions. Supposedly the difficult chapter for term 1, right? So in case y'all have any questions at any point of time, feel free to just drop in your question in the chat box, right? We can quickly take that over. Yes, so that being said, I will quickly start without any further ado. So we still have like 2 subtopics to discuss today. The first is this one, new devotional paths, dialogue and descent in northern India. We also have one remaining, which is the last one, where we'll talk towards the end of the session, right? So under new devotional paths, we have 3 important sub themes. These are basically 3 important figures we'll be talking about, right? We'll see who those 3 people are, but in the meanwhile we'll quickly do a introduction, right? So okay, Nematullah is your hi Nematullah. Good evening. I am doing very well. Thanks for asking. How are you? Hina is here with us. Hi Hina. Welcome back. Okay, so the intro for these new devotional paths and stuff goes as follows, where these poet saints we've been talking about for a really long time in this chapter, at a certain point of time, they were not just silent, right? They were having constant conversations and dialogues with so many other people, right? With so many people, with so many ideas, institutions, situations, right? So much of dialogue, so much of confrontation is happening in very much detailed manner. So poet saints are actually responsible for this dialogue, right? And obviously when a conversation is happening, there needs to be some form of expression for that conversation, right? Like how did it translate or how did it come out in the public, right? So the three figures that we're going to discuss in today's class are the result of this dialogue, right? Firstly, we have Kabir, then we have Mirabai, right? And then we have the founder of Sikh religion, right? So these three influential figures, we'll be talking about their life and what are their contributions, what do they support and what did they not. Yeah, so these are the few topics we'll be talking today. We'll start off with Kabir, very influential figure. Yeah, in your textbook it's titled as Weaving a Divine Fabric, Kabir, right? So okay, before talking about that, Pankaj is here with us. Hi, Pankaj. Pankaj, we are having an MCQ just after this chapter is over, so we need not wait till Vijayanagara to be over. So I'll tell you the dates and all towards the end of the class, right? When we'll be having a quiz, I'll inform you towards the end of this session, right? Okay, so the first figure is Kabir, very influential, right? And the time periods which he actually lived was between 14th and 15th centuries, right? So he always was born towards the end of the 14th and lived mostly through the 15th. So if you think of like an Indian poet saint, the first figure that comes to our mind is obviously Kabir, right? Because he has gained so much importance in not just one part of India but almost throughout the Indian subcontinent. Like everybody knows Kabir, right? So that's how outstanding figure he was. He was an outstanding example. And but sadly, unfortunately, we don't know much information about Kabir. When I say information, I'm talking about personal details, right? Like where was he born, who were his parents, what was his religion, what did he do before coming up with this tradition, right? Like his personal life, did he get married, did he not, blah blah blah. So all of those personal details we don't have an answer for. Historians have been trying so hard to construct a personal history of Kabir, but mostly they have failed, right? So basically we don't have much personal details. Um, Hina, if you're asking like the name, if you're basically referring to weaving a divine fabric, is that you're asking, Hina? Like, why did they name it as weaving a divine fabric? Or, like, what's your question, Nina? Yes, absolutely. Like, foreigners also knew him because whenever back in those 14th, 15th centuries, we already had people coming from all of this Portugal, Spain, right? All of these travelers have been coming to India in 14th, 15th centuries itself. So they knew about Kabir when they were living in India, right? Now in the 21st century, though, like mostly people know, right? So foreigners also knew about him. Okay. So we were talking about the personal details where we don't know much. And definitely it's a difficult task for historians, right? Because firstly, in order for historians to reconstruct a particular history, they need sources. But sadly, we don't even have like sources for Kabir. Then there's no point searching for stuff, right? Like here and there, randomly 1 or 2 points you might come across if you're reading something else. But explicitly, information on Kabir is not available, right? Um, but once he laid the foundation for these particular traditions or these beliefs in whatever he believes in, right? He wrote so many poems. Yeah, he also wrote so many compilations, compositions, prose, poetry, and all that stuff. He wrote so much. Basically, he was a poet come author, right? So whatever he wrote, they were passed down from one generation to another. People, in fact, admired his writings. People, in fact, praised him for whatever he wrote, right? And his writings, after he died, basically got compiled into three distinct but overlapping traditions. What are we seeing here? Kabir is a non-religious person. He did not ascribe himself to any religion, right? He didn't claim himself to be a Hindu, he was not a Christian, he was not a Muslim or a Sikh. But after he died, people from other religions started claiming Kabir to be their own. For example, Muslims or for example Sikhs or Hindus, right? They always said that Kabir was a Muslim by birth or Kabir was a Hindu by birth, right? Because they wanted to incorporate Kabir into their own religion. They were greedy in that sense, right? And also their holy books, right? Like for example, Adi Granth Sahib. It's a holy book for Sikhs. So whatever Kabir preached when he was alive, his teachings were basically incorporated into the Adi Granth Sahib, right? It's not just 6, but there are 3 overlapping traditions in total which have adopted Kabir's verses. So we'll list out what those 3 are. Very, very important, guys, in terms of your term 1 boards. So please pay attention to what these 3 are. Firstly, it's Kabir Bijak. Kabir Bijak is a community name. It basically means followers of Kabir, let's say, right? So they were actually preserved by Kabir Panth, and these people are mostly in present day Varanasi. Varanasi is in Uttar Pradesh, right? So that these people actually borrowed so much from Kabir's beliefs. And secondly, there's something called as Kabir Granthavali. Yeah, that is associated with Dadu Panth in Rajasthan. Dadu Panth is also one sect of Hindu traditions itself. They actually adopted or compiled something known as Kabir Granthavali in present day Rajasthan. And thirdly, we have Adi Granth Sahib, the Sikh religion, which we have talked about. Right? So these 3 are very, very famous books which talk about what Kabir has preached when he was alive. Yeah? Okay, questions time. Any questions, guys, still here? Okay, Hina, to answer your question like that, weaver and fabric and all, again, it's a metaphor, right? Just to form a sentence or a phrase in English which will look elegant. That's why authors have used this. It's basically weaving a divine fabric. It means that Kabir was the first person to establish something in India that is so divine, right? Like he set up or he started that divine thing to be established in the society, right? It has nothing to do with like weaving and like fabrics and stuff. It's just few fancy words, right? Okay, what all other things are there in Adi Granth Sahib? Good question, Hina. So Adi Granth Sahib being the main primary book for Sikh religion people who follow Sikh traditions, whatever compositions or whatever verses and preachings the 10 gurus preached, right? Starting from like Guru Gobind Singh, Guru Arjan Dev, all of these 10 gurus we have for Sikh religion, right? Like whatever they have taught, whatever they have preached, whatever they wrote, all of them are compiled into this Adi Granth Sahib. That's the main purpose. But here and there they have borrowed from Kabir, right? So okay, Tanishq, regarding the Menti quiz, after this we'll quickly have a source boxes discussion, because there are so many sources and boxes in this chapter. The class after that we're having a quiz, right? So that's that. Also, I wanted to ask you if it's fine with you guys if we have a quiz on Sunday. I mean, Sunday most of y'all won't be available, but like only if y'all are comfortable, then we can have a quiz on Sunday, or we can do it on Monday. If it's a Sunday, it's going to be a morning quiz at 11 a.m. If it's Monday, it's going to be an evening quiz at 6 p.m. So whichever is feasible to you guys, Sunday 11 a.m. or Monday 6 p.m. Just let me know in the chat box so that we can proceed according to that, right? Tanishq, in fact, everybody else, what's your choice? Just put it in the chat box. Okay. Tanishq, again another Tanishq. Where's Varanasi? It's in present day Uttar Pradesh, Tanishq. Thank you for answering, whoever's answered that. Hina, I'll try to, but I can't promise. I'll try finishing it soon. Okay, Hina says Sunday. Tanishq says no difference between Monday or Sunday. Okay, we'll figure out as and when another responses keep coming up. We'll figure that out and I'll tell you by the end of this class. Yeah. Okay, got it, Hina. I'll look into it. Okay, so we were talking about 3 particular manuscripts or 3 compilations. These compilations actually were made after the death of Kabir. It's strange, right? Like when a person is alive, probably they did care about Kabir, but like his value is not known until a person dies, right? So in Kabir's situation also, once he died, then all of these compositions came up. Yeah. And by the 19th century, anthologies of verses attributed to him, they almost started circulating in every part of the Indian subcontinent. Yeah. Especially in Bengal, Gujarat, and Maharashtra. It's not just orally passed down, but all of his messages were in fact printed, because there was printing press available, right? So his messages were printed and then circulated amongst people, especially in Bengal, Gujarat, and Maharashtra, right? So he's that famous. Tanishq, what is Kabir Bijak? Kabir Bijak is basically the name of the compilation. It's the name of the book or the name of the manuscript, right? So it's the name, and that book was basically preserved by Kabir Panth. Kabir Panth is a group of people or group of followers of Kabir, right? Who compiled, ma'am? Again, there's no one author, Hina, right? In regards to who actually compiled, for example, let's take Kabir Bijak only. Kabir Bijak was actually preserved by Kabir Panth. Kabir Panth is not the name of a person. It's the name given to followers of Kabir. There can be hundreds and hundreds of followers of Kabir, right? So all of them contributed like a little, right? So there's no one particular author who compiled it. Yeah. Manuscript is nothing but like a piece of document, right? Like back in those days when paper was not available to write, like in the ancient times and all, they used to write on all of these different materials or different surfaces, like rocks, copper plates. Sometimes they used to write it on leaves, right? So all of these were called as manuscripts back in those days. It's just documents, right? Okay. Any questions still there? Please let me know. Otherwise, I will move. Okay, so Kabir's poems. See, again, who wrote these poems? We don't know. Whether Kabir wrote these poems himself or Kabir's followers wrote these poems, we don't have the answer. But like, the historians have often said that some of them Kabir himself wrote, but some of them Kabir's followers wrote, right? Whatever the situation is, these poems have survived in several languages and dialects, right? And like in every language possible, if you want to study Kabir, his poems are definitely available. So that's how that's the extent to which his poems were translated. And others known as Ulat Bansi are written in a form in which everyday meanings are inverted. Again, another special feature of Kabir is that there's something called as Ulat Bansi. This is a genre of literature or poems which Kabir used to write. But what is Ulat Bansi? It's not an English term. I'm not sure if it's a Sanskrit term, but like some different language term, right? So if you translate it to English, it basically means it's upside down sayings. Again, which means that literally it doesn't make any sense. Probably it has a metaphorical meaning, but literally whatever the content is in that poem, it does not make any sense, right? For example, what are these? See, even though he's saying something that doesn't make sense, still people are going crazy about him. What is that, right? It's obviously surprising when somebody is listening to this for the first time. So what are such things that Kabir said which does not make sense, but still people are praising him for that, right? He uses such kind of expressions where we'll look at two examples. It will become clearer for us. First one is the lotus which blooms without flower. It doesn't make sense, right? Lotus in itself is a flower, and if it is blooming, obviously a flower will be there. But his poetry says without flower towards the end. How is that practically possible? It's not like literally true, right? But another example he says is fire raging in the ocean. Again, not possible. Fire will obviously be put down by the force of water. Like fire and water can't go hand in hand. Fire will obviously be blown out. But he says that fire is raging in the ocean. It's not just there, but it's raging, right? But again, like why is he saying all of this? Even though it doesn't literally make sense, people are going crazy about him. The reason being, he wants to talk about life in general, right? Life, or how life works, or what is the ultimate reality of life. By making such comparisons, he is basically trying to convey the message to the audience that life is complicated, right? You can't define life. It's not like one set of rules by which you have to live your life. You can have your own way of living. Yeah, even though you want to know what the ultimate reality is, probably there are some mystical questions, right? What will happen to you after death? Will you be reborn? Will your soul depart from your body, or you're just gone forever? Yeah, like questions like these, we don't have definite answers for. It's just what people believe in. So to all of these things, Kabir is basically saying that don't try to learn what ultimate reality is, because it keeps changing from one person to another. Just like how these sentences do not make any sense, the ultimate reality of life also doesn't make any sense. That is the message that Kabir is trying to convey, right? Okay. So any questions till here? I know it's a little conceptual thing that we have discussed now, but any questions till here, guys? Many verses of Kabir are compiled in the Granthi Sahib. Yes, Tanish, you're absolutely right. We don't have a number for it because there are so many, right? So many verses are compiled. Okay, we were talking about ultimate reality, and knowing the ultimate truth is kind of difficult. That's what Kabir says, right? So, in order to, like talk about ultimate reality, he draws upon so many other traditions. Firstly, he's a non religious person, he's an atheist, which means he doesn't believe in any religion. But at the same time, he's also trying to draw upon other religions to explain what ultimate reality is, right? So the first religion he talks about is Islam. He described the ultimate reality as Allah, Khuda, Hazrat, and Pir. Yeah, the basic point is he draws from Islamic tradition as well, even though he's not a Muslim. Yeah. And secondly, he also draws from Vedantic tradition, which is like the present day Hindu tradition, right? He borrowed terms like Nirakar, Brahman, Atman, Alak. All of these terms he borrowed from Vedantic traditions. And nextly, from yogic traditions, he borrowed two terms, namely Shabda and Shunya. Shabda is basically sound and Shunya is emptiness, right? So these two words were drawn from the yogic traditions. Please remember these words because I have seen a lot of questions coming up from these topics in your exams. In your sample papers, I've seen so many questions. So please remember these terms, guys. Shabda and Shunya from yogic traditions. Okay, I was just about to answer that, Tanishq, but good, your doubt is clear. Okay, okay, so that's how he was borrowing from other traditions. And if you look at his poems or compositions or verses, right, often you come across certain things which are conflicting in nature, right, and or even diverse, right? Like he talks about like various things. The content of his poems is not just restricted to one particular theme or genre, but he talks about a different variety of things, right? Sometimes they are even like conflicting ideas. That's surprising, right? Sometimes they are conflicting ideas. So, for example, like what did he draw upon, or what were his poems talking about? So, some poems basically talk about Islamic ideas and monotheism and iconoclasm to attack Hindu polytheism and idol worship. Again, what is monotheism? We'll break it down one by one. Monotheism is basically a situation where there's only one god per religion. People basically believe only in one god. Again, example for that is Islam. We only have Allah as the god. But at the same time, if you look at Hindu, we have 3.3 crore gods. Vishnu, Shiva, Rama, n number of gods and goddesses, right? So in this situation, mono is one, poly is many, right? So Islam is a monotheistic religion, whereas Hinduism is a polytheistic religion, right? And at the same time, Islam doesn't believe in statues, sculptures, or idol worship. That's called as iconoclasm, where you don't believe in physical appearance of God or statues and stuff. But on the other hand, if you visit any temple, any Hindu temple, you have so many statues there. You have so many idols. Idol worship is very, very important for Hindus, right? So what does Kabir do? He actually supports Islamic rules or Islamic traditions by saying that monotheism is good or iconoclasm is good, and he tries to attack Hinduism. He somehow criticizes Hinduism, saying that polytheism is bad and idol worship is bad, right? But that doesn't mean he totally hates Hinduism. He borrowed something from Hinduism as well. For example, Hindu practice of Nam Simaran, which is remembrance of God's name. Again, if anybody has grandparents in your house, you must have seen that these grandparents have some sort of chain like thing where we have 108 beads, and while chanting the name of the god, they keep counting the number of beads. Right? It's just like constant repeating of the god's name. That is a very famous tradition of Hinduism. Kabir says that that's a good tradition. It is a Hindu tradition, but Kabir liked it. That's what I mean by conflicting ideas, right? On one side, he's critiquing Hinduism, but on the other hand, he's also saying that Hindu practice of Nam Smaran is good thing. Yeah, so that's the paradox of Kabir. Okay. So the poems we've been talking about till now, were all of these composed by Kabir? I have partly answered this question in the previous slide as well. Historians don't think so, right? They can't tell with surety that Kabir was the person who compiled all of these poems. It can sometimes be his followers as well, right? They have been trying so hard to analyze the language used in the poems, the style of writing, the content of whatever is there in the poem, right? They have been studying so hard that they wanted to like come to a conclusion whether Kabir was the person who wrote all of this or did somebody else write. Yeah, but unfortunately we don't have an answer for it. Yeah, the historians are still trying to figure out. And this rich corpus of verses, yeah, all of these compilations of Kabir, they signify that Kabir was, and even now in the 21st century as well, is a source of inspiration for those who question entrenched religious and social institutions. What do we see here? What is the basic point that Kabir is doing? He is going against few social practices. He's going against few religious practices, right? So in this scenario, Kabir is a source of inspiration for many people who wants to question the existing social and religious traditions, right? We have so many superstitions according to religions. Even in the 21st century, there are few people who still follow these superstitions and like random orthodoxy cultures, orthodoxy practices. But Kabir is acting as a source of inspiration for people who wants to question things, who wants to question the divine, right? So he was an important figure in that sense. And just as Kabir's ideas probably crystallized through dialogue and debate, yeah, we were talking in the beginning of the chapter, beginning of the class, right? He just didn't stay silent. He had so many conversations, he had so many dialogues, debates with so many other traditions. They included Sufis, they included yogis and stuff, right? So, n number of traditions were interacting with Kabir, right? That's there. But the last point of this slide is his legacy was very important. People always wanted Kabir for themselves. When I mean for themselves, I'm basically talking about religious traditions, right? Hindu people want Kabir to become a part of Hinduism. They say some random stuff like Kabir was a Hindu by birth. At the same time, Sikh people claim that Kabir was a Sikh by birth and therefore Kabir is a part of Sikh religion. Yeah, people start claiming their own things, whatever comes to their mind. That is why I'm basically referring to the word legacy here. Legacy is very important. People want to claim Kabir's legacy. Okay, we look at few examples where Kabir's legacy was claimed by people, right? This is especially evident in terms of the conflict of his birth, right? So we have so many hagiographies. Again, what are hagiographies? As we've learned a couple of classes before, hagiographies are biographies of famous saints, right? So in these hagiographies written on Kabir, few sources tell us that he was a Muslim by birth, but few sources also tell us that he was a Hindu by birth, right? Again, we don't know who he is. Honestly, we don't know. People just believe whatever they want to believe, right? So these hagiographies were basically composed from around 17th century, which is like 200 years after his death, right? Hagiographies within the Vaishnava tradition, yeah. What do they do? Obviously, because they wanted to establish that Kabir was theirs, or Kabir was a Hindu by birth. They even have like a story for it. They even like say that Kabir was basically a Hindu, like he was born as a Hindu, but he somehow like got lost from his parents, yeah, and then a Muslim family actually adopted him, right? So because he was a Hindu by birth, but unfortunately a Muslim family adopted him, yeah, this Muslim family was basically a community of weavers or julahas, a Sanskrit term, right? So by this example they say that since at the time of birth Kabir was a Hindu, in general also Kabir is a Hindu even though he is raised by Muslim family. That doesn't matter. So Vaishnava people actually narrate this kind of story to claim that Kabir is theirs. Yeah. Uh, Added to that, they also suggest that he was taken into these bhakti form of worship by his guru called as Ramananda. Yeah. So again, Ramananda or some other guru, we don't know because it's not mentioned in any of the sources, but historians say that his guru was Ramananda. Yeah, but Vaishnava tradition basically claims that he was initiated into Bhakti movement or Bhakti tradition, right? Again, like whenever we are referring to Kabir and all, Kabir's Guru, Satguru, these terms were used in the books, but the specific preceptor's name was never used. Preceptor is nothing but Guru, right? So his Guru name was never mentioned in any of these um, sources. Again, there's a different set of historians who say that whatever Vaishnavas are claiming it's false, it's like utter bullshit. But why? Like why are the historians going against the Vaishnava tradition? Because according to these set of historians, Ramananda and Kabir are basically not contemporaries. Again, what is the meaning of the word contemporary? Two people living in the same era. Yeah, let's say this is the 21st century. I am living now, right? In order to say that so and so particular person is my guru, either he has to be born in 20th century or 21st century. He has to be alive now. Then only I can call him as my guru, right? But if I like randomly go back to like 15th, 16th century and say that Kabir is my guru, it's not acceptable, right? Because both of us are not contemporaries. Both of us are not living in the same time frame. So in the same manner, these historians also say that Ramananda and Kabir were not contemporaries. Kabir, as we know, is a 14th, 15th century person, but Ramananda on the other side is 12th or 11th century, right? So that is why historians often say that Vaishnava claims are false, right? So that is why we cannot take these traditions at face value. Like we shouldn't believe whatever the traditions are saying, but in fact we have to like have a rational procedure, rational way of thinking. But nonetheless, keeping aside what's true, what false and all, one point we understood here is the legacy of Kabir became very, very important for future generations, like later generations. Right? So the legacy of Kabir becomes important than anything else. Yeah. Okay, any questions till here, guys? We've finished Kabir till here. Any questions on Kabir or any general questions as such, please let me know. If there are no questions, I will go ahead to talking about Baba Guru Nanak. Okay, I don't see any questions. Cool. So the next, out of the three figures, we've discussed Kabir. Now we have Baba Guru Nanak in front of us, right? So who is he? Do we know something about him? What did he teach? And stuff like that. We'll talk about now, right? So this person by name Baba Guru Nanak, who was born in 1469 and died in 1539, right? We have information about him. Unlike Kabir, sorry, let me just look at Hina's comment for once. Ma'am, but actually Kabir favored Islam. Again, Hina, we don't have evidences that Kabir favored Islam. I mean, even if we do have evidences that Kabir favored Islam, who knows whether they are true or not, right? That is exactly the point I was making regarding Vaishnava tradition, right? Even they are saying that Kabir was a Hindu. But historians have said that it's a wrong statement because Kabir and Ramananda are not contemporaries, right? So that is why it's often good for us to critically engage with these texts instead of believing in everything Hina. Yeah. So we don't really know whether he favored Islam or not. Probably Islam, like Muslim people might say that Kabir actually favored Islam, but we don't know for sure. Yeah. Why did Sikh adopt his compilations from Granth? Okay, so Hina, good question. So in terms of whatever Kabir was teaching, right? They are supposed to be moral philosophies or like the way you're supposed to lead your life. There's nothing like a religious element attached to whatever he's teaching. You know, like he's not favoring any religion or he's not saying that religion is good, this religion is bad. No, he's not saying that. The only thing he's saying is lead a good life, lead a moral life full of ethics, helping people, be generous, be kind, and stuff like that. These are the stuff which any religion says, right? Sikh people say that, Hindu people say that, Christians, Muslims, any religion you take in the world, what do they teach us? They teach us to lead a moral way of life, right? So that is why there's no problem in Sikh people borrowing Kabir's verses, because at the end of the day, the message that they are trying to convey is the same, right? So the message is the same. So that's why they borrowed Hina. Okay, so we'll quickly move on to talk about Baba Guru Nanak. As I was saying, there's a lot of information we know about him, like even his personal details and stuff, right? He was born in a Hindu merchant family in a village called as Nankana Sahib. Yeah, it's near present day river Ravi and it majorly comes in Punjab, right? Again, the place where he was born was basically a predominantly Muslim area, but he was born into a Hindu family. And while he was young, like after he finished his studies and all, he became an accountant. Like he was coming from a very good family, like a decent enough family. So he had that education. He was an accountant by profession, and then he also studied Persian, right? He got married at a young age because back in those days people got married early. But he didn't spend much of his time with the family or with his wife, right? He always was interested in this Bhaktis and Sufis movements, whatever they're teaching, and he was always interested in that kind of stuff. So he was never at home. Barely he was at home. He traveled very widely in different parts of Indian subcontinent, meeting different Sufi saints and Bhakti saints, learning a lot from them, right? So that's what he used to do when he was young. And finally, he came up with his own tradition. All of that happened. So his messages, Baba Guru Nanak's messages, they are basically spelled out in hymns and teachings. Like he used to preach a lot. what is that one thing on which Baba Guru Nanak's teachings are based on? They advocate a form of Nirguna Bhakti. Again, what is Nirguna? Nirguna is basically a shapeless form, a physical form of Bhakti. So he actually stressed on Nirguna Bhakti. He firmly repudiated the external practices of the religions he saw around him. What does this mean? He was critically debating with other religion people, saying that whatever you're doing, all of these extra material stuff, it's no use, because that's not how you worship God. Yeah, there are certain rules by which you have to worship, and all of these material things, all of these extra rituals, yagnas and all of that stuff is not necessary. That's what Baba Guru Nanak believes, right? Right, like what all did he reject? What all was he saying was extra? He says sacrifices are not important, ritual baths are not necessary, image worship is not necessary. Yeah, all of these austerities, scriptures of both Hindus and Muslims, nothing is necessary. You don't have to like bother about any of these things. Yeah, he's simply saying that instead of doing all of this stuff, the only way that you can connect to God is by repeating the divine's name, like chanting, right? Chanting God's name is the main form of worship for him, right? And he also believed that the absolute or Rabb or whatever name you want to give to this person, like we call him God, like in 21st century we call him God, but Guru Nanak called him as Rabb, absolute, whatever name you want to give him. He actually believed that this figure or this person did not have a gender or a form, right? So that's why he believed in Nirguna Bhakti. Yeah. Um, and Baba Guru Nanak would sing these compositions in various ragas, right? He wrote a lot of poems, he wrote a lot of verses. By just chanting them, you worship God. That's what he says, right? So these compositions that he'd made, they were sung in various ragas. Ragas are tunes, right? They were sung in various tunes, and he had an attendant or like a servant, right? His name was Mardana. Mardana actually played the rabab. Rabab is a type of musical instrument, right? So while he's singing, his assistant Mardana used to play the musical instrument, right? Okay, any questions till here, guys? Please let me know if there are any questions. Ronak is here with us. Hi, Ronak. Where am I from? I am from Vijayawada, Ronak. If you know that place, you know it. Okay, how did he come up with the religion? Okay, Hina, good question. Actually, we will see in the next couple of slides that Baba Guru Nanak never wanted to establish a religion. That's not his aim. That's not the purpose why he started off this tradition. Again, remember that there's a lot of difference between tradition and religion, right? Every religion has a certain tradition, but every tradition is not a religion. Again, it might be a little bit confusing, but I'm repeating the sentence again, so please listen carefully. There's a lot of difference between tradition and religion. Yeah, every religion will definitely have a tradition. Tradition is nothing but a set of rules, regulations, beliefs, customs, and all that stuff, right? Every religion will have them. Take any religion in the world, every religion will have traditions. But every tradition cannot become a religion or will not become a religion. Example, Kabir, right? Kabir had his own tradition, but Kabir never established a religion, right? So please be careful with that. Push back, and like whenever I'm using the words religion and tradition, please pay attention to them carefully, right? So to answer your question, Hina, he never wanted to establish a religion. He just wanted to be it as a tradition. But the later Sikhs, as we'll see in the next couple of slides, like the 9th Guru, 10th Guru and all, they were the people who established the Sikh religion. Right? So Baba Guru Nanak was not responsible for Sikh religion. Yeah? Again, good point, Hina. Good question. So that's what I'm saying, right? Ritual baths and all were condemned by Baba Guru Nanak. He was the first Guru, right? But that time, Sikh was not a religion. As time passed by the time 9th and 10th Gurus were there, Guru Gobind Singh and all, they consolidated this tradition and then it became a religion. And once it became a religion, then people started adding all of these extra elements to it. I mean, honestly speaking, if Baba Guru Nanak is here today, like if he's still alive, he would not support all of this ritual things in sarovars and Gurudwara. Like, I don't think he'll support. Because he himself is saying ritual baths are not needed. But somehow in the later times, people added them. Like later gurus, later Sikh leaders, they added them. Right? Good question, Hina. Okay, I'll quickly go ahead. Baba Guru Nanak basically organized his followers into a community, right? Like he just loved the community, right? Even like when you're worshipping God, even when you're like any like gatherings and stuff, a community is a good thing, he says. Instead of worshipping God in your own room or in your own house where nobody else is there, instead gather like 10-15 people, like a group of people, come together as a community, collectively pray to God, collectively worship God. That's a good thing. That's what Baba Guru Nanak advises. Right? Hina, again, fair question. We would, again, that's a whole lot of another debate and discussion as to why didn't they not follow Baba Guru Nanak. Right, like, again, fairly simple, right? Like, as the situations change, as the times change, situations keep changing. Yeah? So, because of these situations, it kind of became essential or necessary for people to slightly twist the existing principles. Right? Again, it's a very important concept, to be very honest. Like, again, Sikh army, like there's a whole separate army dedicated to Sikh people, right? Again, who initiated that? The last Guru, Guru Gobind Singh. But why? Baba Guru Nanak never told that Sikh people are supposed to have a separate army. But why did Guru Gobind Singh come up with the Sikh army? Because when Guru Gobind was alive, the situations are as such that Maratha people, Delhi Sultanate people, Mughal people, people from northwestern India, all of these different kingdoms have been invading the Sikh community. And they obviously have to protect themselves. You just can't let people kill you. Right? So in order to protect yourself, Guru Gobind Singh came up with this army, Sikh army, Khalsa. Again, this is just one example, right? But in the same manner, the point basically here is, depending on the situations, things keep changing a little, right? So that is why these 9 gurus, even though they are believers of Baba Guru Nanak, they sometimes slightly had to twist whatever Baba Guru Nanak told. Yeah, I'm hoping that answers your question, Hina. Okay, where were we? Yeah, we talked about the congregational or community form of worship. And while he was about to die, like he knew that his old age was near, he was about to die, he appointed one of his disciples by name Angad to succeed him as the preceptor. He just wanted Angad to be the next guru, so that he can spread the message of this tradition, right? So this practice of appointing the next guru, one after the other, went on for almost 200 years till the 10th guru, right? The point I was mentioning, right? He never wanted to establish a new religion, but it was his followers and later gurus after his death that they tried to consolidate his practices, because they wanted to distinguish themselves from Hindus and Muslims. The reason is they want to set them apart from Hindus and Muslims, and that's why they established the Sikh tradition as a Sikh religion, right? And there are all the 10 preceptors. Hina, we have this in our textbook. Sikh army is basically called as Khalsa, right? We'll talk about that in the next slide, but just remember the name, it's Khalsa. So there are 10 gurus as we've seen, but we do not need to remember all the gurus' names. A few of them are important though, right? For example, the 5th preceptor by name Guru Arjun is very, very important because he was actually the person who actually wrote down all of these compositions, verses and poems and stuff for the first time, right? Whatever the first 4 gurus have taught, alongside whatever Baba Farid, Ravidas, Kabir, these are also like not a part of Sikh tradition, but they also teach something on their own. So he compiled all of these messages into a book called as Adi Granth Sahib. So if a question comes, who authored or who compiled Adi Granth Sahib, the answer is Guru Arjan, who was the 5th preceptor, right? So in that capacity, Guru Arjan is important. So please remember his name and note it down. So these hymns in Adi Granth Sahib, they're called as Gurbani. They're composed in various languages and later translated as well. And in the late 17th century, there was this 10th preceptor by name Guru Gobind Singh, right? So he then compiled the other, like from 6th to 9th, whatever messages that gurus have given, all of these were compiled by the 10th guru, Guru Gobind Singh. And he slightly changed the name of the book. It's earlier called as Adi Granth Sahib, but now he renamed it as Guru Granth Sahib. Right? So that's how Guru Granth Sahib, the holy book of Sikh religion, came into being. And Guru Gobind Singh, he also laid the foundation of the Khalsa Panth, exactly the point I was talking, Hina. This Khalsa Panth, if you literally translate it, it means army of the pure, right? Again, they formed this army mainly to protect themselves from the external enemies, whoever are trying to invade on them, to protect themselves, right? So this army, whoever wants to join this army, there were like 5 rules or 5 symbols as such. Number 1 is uncut hair. That is why we have Sikhs even today who follow this. They don't cut their hair, but they wear a turban. Nextly, there's a dagger. Dagger is some sort of knife which you hang around on your waist. Then there are a pair of shorts who used to wear back in those times. Then there's a comb and a steel bangle which we call as kada. So these 5 are symbols of the Khalsa Panth, right? So under him, the Sikh community got consolidated into a socio-religious and also a military force, right? So that's that. Any questions till here? Because that's the end of Baba Guru Nanak. We'll talk about Mirabai next. Any questions till here, guys? Hina, good question. Why is he not appointed his son as the successor? Okay, Baba Guru Nanak is one such person who believed in the capabilities of a person rather than the hereditary, right? Again, we don't know the details of it, but historians randomly assumed that probably his son was not interested in the tradition, or he didn't want to become a successor, right? Or Baba Guru Nanak himself thought that his son is not capable enough. We don't know the reason, but The truth is his son didn't become the successor, right? Hina, again, I don't have an answer for that, to be very honest. I don't know utna detailed history of Sikh religion, but I don't know. My wild, like random guess is that once the 10 gurus are done, like after their time period, probably like people thought it's good to worship God on their own instead of depending on the gurus and all. So that is why probably they stopped that tradition, or it can be some other reason as well. But honestly, I don't have the answer to that. But I can like talk research about that and probably tell you in the next class, Hina, if that's okay with you. uh, Meaning of five symbols. There's no meaning as such, but they just wanted to differentiate themselves from other people. So they need to have some sort of markers, right? So the turban on their head with uncut hair, the what were the other things? The comb, the steel bangle that they wear it as kada, right? Even Sikh people wear kadas even today. And there's a dagger, which is a knife on their waist, a pair of shorts. They don't have any internal hidden meaning, but they just wore it to differentiate themselves from other people, right? Okay, so quickly we'll talk about Mirabai and then we'll wind this up because we're already past time. Just give me like 10 minutes, guys. I promise I'll wind this up in 10 minutes. So Mirabai, she lived in the 15th, 16th centuries, a century after Kabir, right? She, if you like think of any women poets in India, the first figure that will come to your mind is Mirabai, right? She was a part of Bhakti tradition, and biographies have been reconstructed primarily from the bhajanas attributed to her, right? These bhajanas and all, they were basically orally transmitted in the beginning, but later on they were translated into written forms, right? So there are some sources which say that she was actually a princess. That's a good thing, right? Because that's like a whole lot of transition, right? From a princess who used to wear all of these jewels, nice, beautiful dresses, and all that stuff. He, she all of a sudden becomes a person who just wears plain white cotton saris. Huge transition. But nonetheless, she was a Rajput princess from Mertha in Marwar, and she also obviously got married to a prince of a Sisodian clan of Mewar who is also in Rajasthan, right? But she didn't like the marriage. She defied her husband. Yeah, she just didn't want to become a wife, or she didn't want to become a mother, and therefore he runs away. Right? She tries to run away. Her in-laws were sort of torturous. They torture her. They try to kill her by giving her poison and all. But somehow, luckily, she escapes out of that palace, and then she just keeps wandering in the isolated places and forests. Right? Again, why is she doing all of this? She is leading a very beautiful life. She's living in a palace. She has so many servants under her. But why is she doing this? Because she is actually a great devotee of Krishna, right? Again, usually people have this devotee God relationship with between people, right? But Mirabai, on the other hand, she never treated Krishna as a god. In fact, she always treated Krishna as her lover, right? So that's like a different kind of relationship which she shared with Krishna, Lord Krishna. There are some traditions which tell that her guru was actually Raidas, yeah, who is also a poet saint, and he is actually from a very lower caste, and he's a leather worker. So she didn't have a problem in choosing her guru to be a leather worker. That basically says that she doesn't have a problem with the caste system. Yeah, she doesn't believe in caste system. That's why she didn't bother much even though her guru was a leather worker from a lower caste, right? So after running away from the palace, she always used to dress herself in either a white robe or a saffron robe, right? To some sort of indicate that she's a widow, right? And Mirabai did not attract a sect of group of followers like other people. People never like followed her. They were never followers of Mirabai. Like Kabir and Baba Guru Nanak had a lot of followers, right? But Mirabai didn't have any. Nonetheless, she was still a source of inspiration from so many people, right? She is an inspiration even now for so many people, right? And her songs even today are sung by a lot of people, especially both men and women, yeah, especially by lower caste people from Gujarat and Rajasthan. They consider Mirabai to be a source of inspiration, right? So that's Mirabai. Quickly taking questions. Hi Vansh, good evening. Again, as you can see, it's chapter 6, part 5, Bhakti-Sufi traditions history class. Hina, yes, I am a student myself right now. Okay, last two slides. Let's talk about reconstructing histories of religious traditions, right? Like, why? Like, it's often difficult for us to reconstruct the histories of religious traditions, but why? Like, why is that so? We have seen that historians draw on a variety of sources to reconstruct histories, like n number of sources are available. Be it sculpture, be it architecture, stories, compositions of men and women, whatever it is, there are so many sources available to us to reconstruct religious histories, right? But as we have seen in chapter 1 and chapter 4, that all of these archaeological remains, such as sculptures and architecture, they can only be understood if you locate them in some sort of context. If you don't have a context, you will not be able to understand the hidden meaning of these sculptures and architecture, right? So it's always important for us to locate these elegant things in a particular context, and only then we will come up with correct meanings, right? And what about textual traditions, right? Till now we've looked at archaeological traditions like sculpture and architecture and stuff. But what about textual traditions? We also have a lot of textual traditions. Yeah, we have them in different languages. We have them in different styles like poetry, prose and all that stuff. Again, they range from being very, very simple to being very, very complex, right? When I mean very simple, direct language is used, like local language is used, like people can actually read whatever is there. Yeah. For example, Vachanas of Basavanna, Veera Shaiva tradition in Karnataka, right? Very, very simple. Like any random person who knows Kannada can access it. But on the other side, there are very complex sources available to us. For example, the Farmans of Mughal emperors. They were issued in Persian. Nobody could read Persian in India. So there's no point in issuing such things, right? Because people can't read. So these range from being very, very simple to very complex. Understanding each type of text requires different skills, right? Because obviously the styles are different, the languages are different, the genres are different, right? So that is why we need different set of skills to understand different texts. And historians have in fact been very well trained in that stuff. Yeah. And all of these traditions continue to flourish till date. Like Veerashaivism is there, Jainism, Buddhism, Kabir is still worshipped, Baba Guru Nanak is still worshipped. Like whatever traditions we've talked about in this chapter, they still exist in the 21st century. Right? So this continuity again has certain advantages, because in case historians are trying to reconstruct a particular part of a tradition and they are not able to understand what is written in that textbook, or if they're not able to figure out what is that sculpture, they can easily relate it to present day because people are still following the same things. There's a continuity of tradition, right? They can easily, by looking at present traditions, understand what the past traditions were. But at the same time, we also have to accept the fact that since times change, right, certain traditions also change along with time. We've just looked at the example of Sikh religion, right? Just as Hina was mentioning, these ritual baths and all were not a part of what Baba Guru Nanak said. But if you visit any Gurudwara today, you have all of these ritual bathing places. Why is that so? Because with time, there are certain changes happening. So in this scenario, historians have to be very, very careful in understanding the past by relating it to the present, because people are sensible when it comes to religious matters. Yeah. If historian says something which is offending to the present day community, present day religious community, they will like start protesting, like huge conflicts and fights will happen. So it's always necessary that a historian have to be sensible enough while he's trying to reconstruct religious histories, right? So that's that basically brings us to the end of today's class, by the point that people have to be careful while reconstructing histories, right? Okay, so any questions till here, please let me know. We're basically towards the end of the class as well as end of the chapter. We just have like source boxes to do, which we'll do in Friday's class, right? But before that, any questions, please let me know. Hina says one short revision of Vijayanagara Empire. We can do that, Hina. That's not a problem. Probably we can have like a 1.5 hour class that day, because within 1 hour, one shot revisions are not effective. So probably I'll have like a 1.5 hour class and do a one shot revision of Vijayanagara Empire. We can do that, don't worry. Okay, Swada has a question. Mahavira being the 24th Tirthankara. You didn't understand. Okay, fairly simple, Swada. So when it comes to Jainism, right, we often think that Jainism actually came up in the 6th century BC, right? But that's not the case. That is not true. Why? Because the Jainism as a religion has been there way before 6th century, but the only thing is it hasn't become famous. It is not that popular, right? That is why people didn't care much about it. In fact, there are 23 other people just like this person, Mahavira, 23 predecessors of him, who actually preached the same thing. Whatever the 23 people were telling, Mahavira is also telling the same thing. But why did Mahavira become so famous and not the other 23 Tirthankaras? That's the question. Because Mahavira was actually a very good orator, right? He put in so much effort to spread the word of the religion, right? He talked to people, he held so many conversations with people, he convinced people that Jainism is the best way of living and therefore convert to Jainism, right? So again, there's nothing to like not understand about it. 20, see, Tirthankaras, gurus, preceptors, same thing, right? They are basically the heads of religions. There have been 23 people before him. He's just another Jaina teacher. But he just became famous. And his number is 24. Right? So it's just that, nothing complex in that, Swada. Again, all of this has to attribute to the fact that Jainism was there much before the 6th century BC, right? And that is when all of these 23 people existed in a chronological order, right? No problem, Swada, you can keep asking because it's just revision times, right? So during revision times, you can keep asking questions from any chapter. I get it that you all might be revising a different chapter than the ones I've been explaining, right? So it's totally fine, Swada. Okay, cool. Any other questions, guys, or should we wind this up? Keep typing down your questions if you all have any. In the meanwhile, I'll try to wind this class up. So there's something called as Bugs Bounty, guys. It's a special feature of Unacademy. It's basically an opportunity for you learners where you can report any sort of inappropriate content in this video or any video. You can even claim your prize for that if you're the first person to report that particular issue. And there's a form in the description below of this video. You can use that form to report any inappropriate content. So that's Bugs Bounty. And yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. That's the end of this chapter. We'll talk about the source boxes in Thursday's class, right? And then we'll go on to take a quiz on that chapter. Sorry, Friday's class, sorry. And then we'll have a quiz on that chapter, right? And finally, if you like the content of these videos, please do like it, share it as much as possible, and also subscribe to the channel Unacademy and Scholars in particular. Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in. I'll just hang around for a couple of seconds in case you all have any questions. But in a case there are none, you all are free to leave. Officially, the class is over. Okay, I don't think there are any questions. I can wind this up. So yeah, just an update. I'll see you guys again on Friday at 6 p.m. right, where we'll be talking about the source boxes from this chapter itself. So yeah, I'll see you soon. Till then, have a good evening today. Have a good day tomorrow as well. Take care.